I don't want her. I never did. The Vampire King's words echoed through the stone corridor like a death sentence. Laura Moretti stood frozen in the shadows, her wedding veil trembling against her skin, her hand pressed over her mouth to silence the sob threatening to escape. In less than an hour, she would walk down the aisle to marry this man, the man who just said he never wanted her at all. But what he didn't know, what none of them knew, was that the unwanted bride hiding in the darkness would become the only thing capable of saving his immortal soul. 20 minutes earlier, Laura had been searching for her mother's silver cross pendant, the last gift before the vampire curse stole the woman who'd once sung her lullabies. It had slipped from her trembling fingers during the final dress fitting, rolling away like all the choices she'd never been allowed to make. She'd followed it here to this forgotten hallway in the Vampire King's castle in New Orleans, a sprawling fortress of black stone where vampires had ruled for 3 centuries, where her father had sold her like property to secure an alliance with immortal power, where she would become a wife at midnight in the catacombs below. Her pearl wedding dress caught the dim candlelight as she moved closer to the voices. Her long black hair was twisted into an elegant bun, her veil cascading down her back like a ghost. She looked like a bride from a fairy tale. But fairy tales were lies told to girls who didn't know better. Then why go through with this charade, cousin? A second voice, sharp and mocking. Dario. Through the crack in the doorway, Laura could see them now. Elio Vieira, the Vampire King himself, stood with his back to her, tall and impossibly beautiful, black hair gleaming in the candlelight. When he turned slightly, she caught a glimpse of those cold gray eyes, the flash of sharp fangs as he smiled. That terrible, calculating smile. Her bloodline? He said, his voice smooth as smoke and just as poisonous. Her grandmother's ancient magic runs in her veins. A hybrid child with that power could destroy the Bloodthorn clan forever. The sound of liquid pouring wine or blood Laura couldn't tell. She's just a spoiled girl who thinks vampires are romantic, like something from her precious novels. She'll serve her purpose. That's all that matters. Serve her purpose? Laura's hand flew to her mouth, crushing the cry that wanted to escape. The cross pendant lay forgotten at her feet, glinting like a fallen star. She remembered her mother's final lucid moment before madness consumed her. Be strong, my darling. In dark places, you must be your own light. But how could she be light when the Vampire King only saw her as a vessel? A tool, a womb, to carry his weapon against his enemies. If you're feeling what Laura feels right now, hit that like button and follow this channel, because what happens next will prove that sometimes the people who underestimate us become the ones who need us most. Bruno, the Vampire King's right-hand man, spoke from somewhere in the shadows, his scarred face barely visible. The girl is kind, my lord. Perhaps she deserves. Kindness is irrelevant. Elio's voice cut through the air like a blade. I don't want her. I never did. This is strategy, an alliance, a means to an end. He paused, and Laura heard the clink of crystal. In 300 years, I've learned that wanting things makes you weak, and I didn't survive this long by being weak. Each word was a stone thrown at glass. Each word shattered something inside her. Laura stepped back, her veil catching on the rough stone wall. She should leave, should run, should find somewhere to hide and cry until there were no tears left. But instead, something shifted inside her, not breaking, hardening. She looked down at her mother's cross pendant on the cold floor. Let it stay there. Let it be buried with the girl who'd believed in love and safety in being wanted for more than her bloodline. That girl died tonight. In her place stood someone new. Someone who would walk into those catacombs and marry the Vampire King with her eyes wide open. Someone who would survive him, outlast him, prove to every immortal in that god-forsaken castle that she was more than a vessel. She was a woman, and women who'd been underestimated had a way of becoming unforgettable. What the Vampire King didn't know, what he couldn't possibly know, was that the bride he didn't want would become the salvation he desperately needed. And by the time he realized it, it might already be too late. Laura walked into the catacombs alone. The ceremony happened in a blur of candlelight and ancient rituals. Immortal guests filled the shadows, vampires who'd witnessed centuries, their eyes glowing like embers in the darkness. The air tasted of incense and old blood. When the Vampire King took her hand, his touch was ice. When he lifted her veil, his gray eyes held no warmth, no recognition, just calculated emptiness. "You look beautiful," he said. The words sounded rehearsed. "Thank you," Laura whispered. "You look like a liar." The kiss was brief, formal. His lips barely brushed hers before he pulled away, fangs carefully concealed. Around them, vampires applauded. Her father, Vittorio, smiled with relief. His alliance secured, his daughter delivered. Laura felt the weight of expectation settle over her shoulders like a shroud. That night, Elio performed his duty. A ceremonial bite to her neck, light-controlled, meant to mark her as his. She felt his fangs pierce skin, felt warmth trickle down her throat. Then he withdrew and left her alone in the East Wing bedroom, the door closing with finality. Laura stared at the ceiling until dawn, touching the mark that would fade by morning. This is survival, she told herself. This is all it will ever be. 3 months passed like winter cold, endless gray. Laura and Elio lived as strangers under one roof. She occupied the East Wing, where weak autumn sunlight filtered through heavy curtains. He remained in the West Wing, where darkness pooled in corners, and mirrors reflected nothing. They met only for appearances, formal dinners with visiting vampire clans, rituals under blood moons, polite acknowledgments in hallways that echoed with centuries of secrets. Laura built her own world within the prison of his castle. She started charity work for vampire victims, humans who'd been bitten and abandoned, cursed with immortality they never asked for. She collected magical artifacts from the castle's forgotten rooms, studying ancient books and cursed mirrors, things the Vampire King had discarded or ignored. If I cannot have love, she thought, I will have purpose. But something strange began to happen. Small things, barely noticeable. A rare, magical book appeared on her nightstand, one she'd mentioned wanting to Bruno weeks ago. The East Wing grew warmer, protected by spells she hadn't requested. Fresh, night-blooming jasmine filled her room each evening, though no servants admitted bringing it. And sometimes, late at night, she felt eyes watching her through the darkness. First breakthrough, 50700. "He asks about you," Bruno said one evening. Laura looked up from the artifact she was cataloging. A silver mirror said to show truth. The scarred vampire stood in her doorway, respectful as always, his immortal face unreadable. "What does he ask?" Her voice came out steadier than she felt. "If you're well, if you need anything, if you seem—" Bruno paused. "Content." Laura set down the mirror carefully. "And what do you tell him?" "That you are managing." Bruno's expression softened just slightly. "But perhaps Miss Laura, managing is not the same as living." After he left, Laura stood at her window watching the moon rise over New Orleans. Fog rolled through the courtyard below, silver and ghostly. Why does he care? She wondered. Why watch over someone he doesn't want? That night, she attended dinner with her friend Lena, a hybrid vampire, straightforward and loyal, one of the few in this dark world Laura trusted. They sat beneath a blood moon at a jazz club in the French Quarter, surrounded by humans who had no idea immortals walked among them. "He's tripled your protective wards," Lena said, sipping dark wine. "That's not insignificant, Laura. It's strategic. I'm valuable breeding stock." Laura's fingers traced the rim of her glass. "He said so himself." "Oh, or..." Lena leaned closer. "Maybe you're becoming more than that." Laura wanted to believe it. God, she wanted to. But belief required trust, and trust required proof. The attack came without warning. Laura left the jazz club near midnight fog, thick as smoke around her feet. Lena had already departed. The street was empty, too empty for the French Quarter. Then she heard it. A low growl. Not human, not entirely vampire. She turned, heart hammering, and saw the carriage, black as pitch, racing toward her through the mist. Its windows shattered as dark magic poured out glass, exploding into blood-red crystal dust that hung in the air like frozen stars. Bloodthorn Clan. Laura ran. Behind her, the carriage gave chase wheels, screaming against cobblestones. Vampire howls echoed like thunder off the buildings. Magic crackled, burning the air, singeing her skin. She'd almost reached the corner when strong hands grabbed her, pulling her into an alley. "Don't scream!" Elio's voice, urgent nothing like the cold stranger she'd married. "I've got you." He held her against his chest, one arm around her waist, the other raised toward their attackers. Power radiated from him, ancient, terrifying, protective. The pursuing vampires skidded to a stop, hissing, then vanished into shadow. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Laura felt his heart beating faint, but real, a rhythm she'd never noticed before. Proof that somewhere beneath 3 centuries of ice, something human still remained. "Are you hurt?" His voice was different, shaking. "No." She pulled back, looked up at him. In the moonlight, his gray eyes weren't empty. They were terrified. "You came." "Of course I came." His jaw tightened. "Did you think I wouldn't? You said I was just..." "I know what I said." He released her, stepped back, but his hands trembled. "Laura? Whatever he was about to confess shattered as more shadows moved in the fog. "Safe house," he commanded, taking her hand. "Now." Peak moment, minute 18, 9, 10:30. They reached the underground sanctuary just before dawn, a hidden room beneath the cemetery protected by ancestral magic. Elio sealed the entrance with blood wards, while Laura collapsed against the wall, adrenaline finally crashing. "They wanted to kill me," she whispered. "No." Elio knelt before her gray eyes, meeting hers with an intensity that stole her breath. "They wanted to take you, because you're becoming my weakness." "I'm not..." "You are." His voice broke. "God help me, Laura, you are." His hands cupped her face, gentle despite their strength. This close, she could see the truth he'd been hiding. The fear, the longing, the war between what he wanted and what he'd convinced himself he couldn't have. "I heard you," she confessed. "That night, before the wedding, what you said to Dario. I don't want her. I never did." Elio closed his eyes. "I know." "You knew." "Bruno told me. After." He opened his eyes, and in them Laura saw something she'd never expected. Regret. "I was afraid," he whispered. 300 years old, and I was afraid of a 27-year-old woman who looked at me like I could be more than a monster. His thumb traced her cheekbone. "I've done terrible things, Laura. I've ended lives, destroyed families. I became cold because cold things don't break. But you, his voice cracked. You make me want to feel again, and that terrifies me more than any enemy ever could. Laura's breath caught. For the first time since her mother's curse, since her forced marriage, since becoming an object in someone else's war, she felt seen. Then feel, she whispered. Elio kissed her. Not like the wedding, not formal or cold or dutiful. This kiss was desperate, honest 3 months of loneliness and longing poured into a single moment. His lips were gentle despite his fangs. His hands shook as they held her. When they broke apart, both were trembling. I don't know how to do this, Elio confessed. How to be gentle. Then we'll learn together. Just when she thought she could trust again, the past returned. Stay with us because the real test of their bond is about to begin. For 2 weeks, Laura and Elio lived in a world remade. They moved from the safe house to the south wing of the castle neutral territory, neither his darkness nor her borrowed light. A space they could build together. Every evening, the Vampire King returned from hunting bloodthorn vampires at dawn, his coat stained with ash and blood. Every evening, Laura waited for him, tending to wounds that would heal by nightfall, but still needed gentle hands. They talked. God, they talked. About his childhood in 1725, a 17-year-old boy forced to choose between death and immortality when plague took his family. About her mother's slow descent into madness, the vampire curse that stole memories before it stole breath. About loneliness that stretched across centuries for him and years for her, but felt the same in the dark. I loved someone once. Elio confessed one night, his head in her lap, gray eyes distant. Before I learned to be cold, she was human, beautiful, kind. He paused. I lost control. One night, just once. My bloodlust. His voice cracked. I drained her completely. After that, I swore I'd never feel again. Laura's fingers stroked his hair, tears sliding down her cheeks. I'm not her. I know. He looked up at her. That's what terrifies me. But terror didn't stop him from pulling her close, from kissing her like she was salvation, from sharing his ancient blood with her one moonlit night, a vampire ritual that bound their lives together, that would slow her aging, give her decades she shouldn't have. You're mine now, he whispered against her throat, for as long as you'll have me. Forever then, Laura breathed. She believed it. The war with Bloodthorn lasted 14 nights. 14 nights of Elio leading vampire hunters into the bayou, while Laura worked behind the scenes coordinating safe houses, visiting victims' families, earning loyalty from clan members who'd once seen her as nothing more than a human ornament. On the 10th night, they discovered Dario's betrayal. Bruno found the evidence secret correspondence coded messages vials of poisoned blood that Dario had been feeding to Bloodthorn spies. His own cousin selling clan secrets for a promise of power. He injected himself with their blood, Bruno explained, face grim. A binding ritual. He belongs to them now. The confrontation happened in the throne room at midnight. Dario knelt before the Vampire King, defiant even in chains. You've gone soft, he spat. All for a human girl who'll die in a blink while we live forever. Your weak cousin, and weakness gets immortals killed. Elio's voice was ice. The only one dying here is you. Laura watched as they dragged Dario to the catacombs for execution spectral fire that would burn his immortal soul to ash. She felt nothing, no pity, no mercy, only relief that the traitor was gone. But relief was a dangerous thing. It made you forget that danger doesn't end. It just waits. 3 nights after Dario's execution, Laura felt it. A strange warmth low in her abdomen. A flutter like wings, a sensation both foreign and somehow right. She was in the South Wing library cataloging artifacts when the wave of nausea hit. She barely made it to the washroom before her body rejected everything she'd eaten. When she looked up, Lena was there, eyes wide with understanding. "Laura?" Her friend's voice was barely a whisper. "When was your last—" "No." Laura shook her head. "That's impossible. We've only been together 2 weeks, and vampires can't—" "Hybrid vampires can." Lena knelt beside her. "And you carry your grandmother's ancient blood. Blood that heals, blood that creates." She placed a gentle hand on Laura's stomach. "Blood that could give life to something the vampire world hasn't seen in 300 years. A child." Laura's hand flew to her abdomen, trembling. A hybrid child, half her humanity, half Elio's immortality. "How long?" she whispered. "Vampire pregnancies are accelerated. 6 months total." Lena's expression softened. "You're maybe 3 weeks along. The nausea confirms it." Laura's world tilted. She'd spent her whole life being told what she was worth, her bloodline, her potential as a vessel. Now here she was, actually carrying a child, and for the first time, it wasn't strategy or duty or obligation. It was love. "I need to tell Elio." But before she could stand, Bruno appeared in the doorway, his scarred face pale. "Miss Laura, you need to come, now." The Vampire Council had gathered in the throne room, clan leaders from across New Orleans, ancient immortals who'd ruled for centuries. Their faces were grave. Elio stood at the center, tension radiating from every line of his body. "What's happening?" Laura demanded. An elder vampire stepped forward, Marcus Vitali, from a small but ambitious rival clan. Silver-haired, cunning, dangerous. "We've received word that the Vampire King has become compromised." Vitali's smile was cold. "That his love for a human has made him weak, unfit to lead." "That's absurd," Laura snapped. "Is it—" Vitali gestured to the assembled vampires. "He's shared his blood with you, bound his immortal life to your mortal one. He's neglected clan expansion, vampire traditions, all for—" He sneered. "Domesticity." Elio's voice cut like a blade. "Choose your next words carefully, Vitali." "I choose truth." Vitali turned to the council. "Our king is distracted, weakened, and now," his eyes gleamed. "Now we've learned something even more troubling." Laura's blood turned to ice. "She's pregnant," Vitali announced. The room erupted, voices overlapped, shock, disgust, anger. An elder vampire hissed about abominations. Another called it unnatural. A third demanded the pregnancy be terminated. Laura's hand instinctively covered her stomach. Elio moved faster than thought, positioning himself between Laura and the council, fangs bared. "Anyone who touches her answers to me." "You see," Vitali spread his arms. "Compromised, irrational. He threatens his own clan for a human carrying a monster." "She is my wife," Elio snarled. "And that child is the future of this clan. Anyone who disagrees can challenge me now." Silence fell. No one moved. Vitali smiled slowly. "We don't need to challenge you, cousin. We just need to wait for you to destroy yourself." He bowed mockingly. "Congratulations on your coming heir. I'm sure it will bring you great joy." The council dispersed, leaving Laura and Elio alone in the echoing throne room. "They know?" Laura whispered. "How did they—" "Spies, always spies." Elio pulled her close, his heart hammering against her cheek. "I won't let them hurt you. Or our child." "Elio, I need you to stay in the South Wing. Triple wards. Bruno will guard you personally." He pulled back, cupped her face. "I have to handle Vitali before this escalates." "Don't go." Fear clawed at Laura's throat. "Please, Something feels wrong. I'll be back before dawn. He kissed her forehead. I promise. He left. Laura stood alone in the vast, empty throne room, one hand on her stomach, listening to the echo of his footsteps fade. The sun set. Dawn came. The vampire king didn't return. Laura paced the south wing, nausea forgotten, replaced by dread that grew with each passing hour. Bruno brought news in fragments. Elio had gone to meet Vitali. The meeting was supposed to be neutral, but Vitali had lied. It was a trap. Silver blade, Bruno said, his voice hollow. Through the heart. He's not dead, he's too ancient for that. But the poison is spreading. Laura ran, down corridors through the west wing into Elio's chambers where they'd brought him. He lay on black silk sheets, gray eyes, closed skin, paler than moonlight. Blood dark, almost black, soaked through the bandages covering his chest. The silver blade was gone, but its poison remained spreading through his immortal veins like death in slow motion. Elio! Laura fell to her knees beside the bed, gripping his cold hand. Elio, please. His eyes fluttered open. Barely. Laura? His voice was a rasp. The baby is fine. We're both fine. But you... Tears streamed down her face. You can't leave us. You promised. Get... Bruno? Each word cost him. Papers, in desk. Everything is yours, the clan, the castle, all of it. No. Laura shook her head violently. No, I'm not accepting this. There has to be a way. Ancient silver. Elio's breathing was labored. No cure. I'm sorry. So sorry that I wasted 3 months being afraid when I could have loved you. His hand slipped from hers. His eyes closed. Laura felt her world shatter. And in that moment, she realized the terrible truth. Laura stared at Elio's lifeless hand in hers. The room spun, her vision blurred. Somewhere in the distance, Bruno was speaking words about funeral rites, about clan succession, about how she needed to rest for the baby. But all Laura could hear was her mother's voice from 20 years ago. Be strong, my darling. In dark places, you must be your own light. Light. Laura looked down at her hands, at the faint glow beneath her skin, barely visible like moonlight through water. Her grandmother's ancient blood. Blood that healed, blood that created, blood that Lena said could give life to a hybrid child. If her blood could create life, could it save one Bruno? Laura's voice cut through the fog of grief. Get me the oldest vampire texts, everything about ancient bloodlines, healing rituals. Now. The scarred vampire's eyes widened. Miss Laura, you need to rest. Now, Bruno. He ran. Laura turned back to Elio, placed both hands on his chest, where silver poisons spread like black veins beneath pale skin. She closed her eyes. Please, she prayed to whatever god might listen to a vampire's unwanted bride. Please, let me be enough. For 3 hours, Laura read. Ancient texts spread across Elio's bedchamber. Vampire witches summoned from across New Orleans, all of them searching for something, anything, that might reverse ancient silver poisoning. There's nothing, an elder witch said finally, her voice gentle but firm. I'm sorry, child. When silver pierces an immortal heart, death is slow but certain. Then we make something new. Laura's hands shook as she turned another page. My blood healed a vampire aid last month. Just a small wound, but it healed. What if... Your blood is powerful, yes. The witch's expression softened. But this isn't a wound. This is poison in his very essence. To heal him, you'd need to replace the poisoned blood entirely. And that would require... She stopped. What? Laura demanded. What would it require? A transfusion. Your blood for his. But the risk... The witch shook her head. You're pregnant. Your blood is sustaining 2 lives already. To give enough to save him would mean I'll die. Silence fell like snow. Laura looked at Elio's face, so still, so pale. She remembered the first time she'd seen him in the candlelight, cold and calculating. She remembered the first time he'd kissed her honestly, desperate and afraid. She remembered his confession. I wasted 3 months being afraid when I could have loved you. She wouldn't waste another second. There has to be another way, Lena said, appearing in the doorway. Laura, you can't. Can you promise me another way exists? Laura met her friend's eyes. Can you? Lena's silence was answer enough. Laura barely registered the preparations, the ritual circle drawn in salt and ash, the ancient words chanted in languages older than New Orleans itself, the silver blade they would use to open her veins. All she could think about was her mother. How many nights had Laura watched her fade, watched the curse steal her mind piece by piece, until the woman who sang lullabies became a stranger, who screamed at shadows Laura had been helpless then. A child, powerless to save someone she loved. She wasn't helpless now. Elio, she thought, if you can hear me in whatever darkness you're trapped in, I'm coming. Hold on. In the space between life and death, the vampire king dreamed. He was 17 again, dying of plague, a vampire offering him immortality with blood-stained hands. Choose, the creature had whispered. Death or darkness. He'd chosen darkness and spent 300 years regretting it, until Laura. Laura, who looked at him like he could be more than a monster. Laura, who made him want to feel again. Laura, who carried his child and his heart and his entire reason for existing. I'm sorry, he wanted to tell her. I'm sorry I was afraid. I'm sorry I wasted time. I'm sorry. Then he felt it. Warmth. Light. Her blood pouring into his veins like liquid starlight, burning away the silver poison, filling the emptiness with something he'd forgotten existed. Hope. Laura collapsed as the last of her blood flowed through the ritual circle into Elio's body. The world tilted. Darkness crept in at the edges of her vision. She heard Lena screaming, Bruno shouting for the witches, chaos erupting around her. But all Laura felt was peace. She'd saved him. Whatever happened to her now didn't matter. She'd a hand caught hers. Strong. Warm. Alive. Laura. Elio's voice, not a rasp, not dying, but strong and clear and terrified. Her eyes fluttered open. Through blurring vision, she saw him sitting up, blood-black veins fading from his skin. Gray eyes wide with horror as he looked at her. What did you do? He whispered. What did you? Saved you. Laura breathed. I saved you. You're dying. His voice broke. You gave too much. The baby will be fine. Laura's hand found her stomach, still warm, still fluttering with life. She's stronger than you think. We both are. No. Elio pulled her into his arms, and she felt his tears, blood-red vampire tears he'd shed only once in 300 years. No, I won't lose you. Not like this. Not because of me. You're not losing me. Laura cupped his face with trembling hands. Look at me, Elio. Really look. He did, and saw what she'd seen in the ancient texts, what the witches had whispered about what her grandmother's bloodline had always been capable of. Healing. Even now, as her blood replenished his ancient vampire blood bound to hers 2 weeks ago in that moonlit ritual was flowing back. A perfect exchange, a balance. 2 lives sustaining each other. Life for life, blood for blood, love for love. The darkness receded from Laura's vision. Her heartbeat steadied. The baby kicked strong, insistent, alive. I told you, she whispered. We're stronger than you think. Elio kissed her, then desperate, grateful, disbelieving. His hands shook as they held her face. You could have died. You almost... But I didn't. Laura pressed her forehead to his. We didn't. Any of us. For a long moment, they simply held each other. Two people who'd started as strangers in a loveless marriage who'd become something neither of them expected. Salvation. Around them, the vampire witches whispered in awe. Bruno knelt, head bowed. Even Lena wiped tears from her eyes. The prophecy, an elder witch breathed. A hybrid child who heals. But it wasn't just the child, it was the mother. Ancient blood that brings life to the dead. Laura didn't care about prophecies. Didn't care about bloodlines or vampire politics or what this meant for the clans. All she cared about was Elio's heartbeat against her cheek, steady, strong, alive. I love you, she whispered. I should have said it before. I love you. I know. Elio's voice cracked. God, Laura, I know. I love you too, so much it terrifies me. Then let's be terrified together. But as Laura pulled back, she saw something that made her blood run cold. Through the window, dawn was breaking, and in the courtyard below, torches gathered. Vitali had returned, with an army. For the first time since becoming the Vampire King's wife, Laura knew what she had to do. Not survive, not hide, but fight. She'd be his salvation, and he would be hers. Laura stood at the window watching Vitali's torches multiply in the courtyard below, like stars made of fire. Behind her, Elio rose from the bed, still weak but alive. His hand found hers, fingers interlacing with a gentle pressure that said everything words couldn't. You should rest, he murmured. You almost died saving me. And you almost died protecting me. Laura turned to face him. We're done hiding, Elio. Both of us. She walked to the wardrobe and pulled out a blood-red gown, the same one she'd worn to the Vampire Council meeting, the one that had made ancient immortals kneel. She'd been 3 weeks pregnant, then terrified, but standing tall. Now she was 6 weeks along the baby, a steady flutter beneath her heart, and she wasn't terrified anymore. She was ready. What are you doing? Elio asked. What I should have done the moment Vitali called our child an abomination. Laura began dressing her movements, deliberate. I'm going to teach him and every vampire who thinks love makes us weak exactly how wrong they are. Elio's expression shifted, pride mixed with concern. Laura, you said it yourself. I'm your weakness. She turned to him, eyes blazing. So let's show them what happens when they threaten your weakness. They descended the stairs together. Elio wanted to go first to shield her, but Laura walked beside him, equal not protected. Her hand rested on her stomach, the other gripping his. 2 lives bound by blood and choice and something far stronger than vampire magic. Love. Bruno met them at the throne room entrance, his scarred face grim. Vitali has 50 vampires. They're demanding the Vampire King surrender leadership or... He glanced at Laura. Or they'll take her, and the child. Let them try, Laura said quietly. The throne room doors opened. Vitali stood at the center, surrounded by his army vampires, in dark armor, eyes glowing like embers, fangs bared in anticipation of violence. The air crackled with hostile magic. Elio Vieira. Vitali's voice echoed off ancient stone. You've become a liability to this clan. Your obsession with this human has weakened us, exposed us. It's time. It's time, Laura interrupted, stepping forward. For you to kneel. Silence fell. Vitali laughed a sharp, cruel sound. You a pregnant human who saved the Vampire King's life 3 hours ago. Laura's voice cut through the throne room like a blade. Who carries ancient blood that heals immortals? Who will bear the first hybrid child in 3 centuries? She moved closer, each step deliberate. I am not a weakness, Vitali. I am the future. And you will show respect or face the consequences. Consequences? Vitali sneered. Laura raised her hand. Light poured from her palm, the same healing light that had saved Elio, but brighter, now focused. It struck the stone floor between them, leaving a scorch mark that glowed like molten gold. Every vampire in the room stepped back. My blood doesn't just heal, Laura said softly. It destroys those who threaten what I love. So I'll ask you once, Vitali, do you kneel, or do I show you exactly what ancient bloodline magic can do? Vitali knelt, slowly, reluctantly, but he knelt. His army followed, heads bowed, the threat dissolving like shadow in sunlight. Laura felt Elio's hand on her shoulder, steady, proud, anchoring her to earth when power threatened to lift her away. You are dismissed, Elio told Vitali, and if you ever threaten my wife or child again, there won't be enough of you left to burn. When the throne room emptied, Laura sagged against Elio, the adrenaline finally crashing. He caught her, held her close. That was... He laughed, the sound breaking with emotion. You were incredible. I was terrified, Laura confessed. You were brave. Elio pulled back, cupped her face. And you were right. Love doesn't make us weak. It makes us dangerous, Laura finished. To anyone who threatens it. They stood in the empty throne room, 2 people who'd married as strangers and become each other's salvation. Around them, the castle felt different, not a prison anymore, but a home they'd chosen to defend. Together. 3 months passed like dawn, breaking slowly over New Orleans. Laura's pregnancy progressed, her belly growing round, the baby's movements growing stronger. She spent her days visiting vampire victims, establishing healing centers, using her blood carefully in small amounts to cure those cursed by rogue immortals. The vampire clans watched in awe as the woman they'd dismissed as just a human transformed their dark world into something that held hope. Elio watched too, but differently. He watched the way she touched her stomach when she thought no one was looking. The way she smiled at children in the French Quarter, imagining their own daughter's laughter. The way she'd transformed from a girl who'd overheard herself being called worthless into a queen who commanded respect without demanding it. One evening, as they prepared for bed in the south wing, Elio found something on Laura's nightstand. Her mother's silver cross pendant. The one she'd dropped the night before their wedding when she'd overheard him say he didn't want her. I went back for it, Laura said softly, noticing his gaze. After Vitali knelt, Bruno helped me find it in that corridor. Elio picked it up, the silver warm from her touch. Your mother told you to be your own light. She did. Laura took the pendant, clasped it around her neck. I spent so long thinking that meant surviving in darkness. But it meant something else. What? That sometimes, Laura said, meeting his eyes, the light we need is the love we choose to protect. Even when we're afraid. Especially then. Elio pulled her close, his hand resting on her pregnant belly, where their daughter kicked in response to his touch. I was so afraid of loving you, he confessed. Afraid I'd lose control, hurt you like I hurt her. But you didn't. Laura's fingers laced with his over their child. You learned that love isn't about control, Elio. It's about trust. And we trust each other now. We do. He pressed his forehead to hers. Even when it terrifies me. Especially then. Laura whispered. They stood together in the warm glow of candlelight, the castle settling into nighttime silence around them. Through the window, New Orleans sparkled alive, dangerous, beautiful. Just like them. Laura thought of the girl she'd been 6 months ago, scared, overlooked, treated like an object. That girl had died the night she overheard Elio's rejection. In her place stood someone new. Someone who'd learned that strength wasn't about surviving. It was about choosing to fight for what mattered. For love. For family. For the future growing beneath her heart. The castle felt different now. Not like a tomb where love came to die, but like a home where it learned to thrive, messy and terrifying and more beautiful than either of them had imagined possible. The child came on a night when snow fell over New Orleans, a rare and magical thing like the baby herself. Elena. Laura held her daughter for the first time in the South Wing bedroom, the Vampire King kneeling beside them, his gray eyes wet with blood-red tears for the third time in 300 years. "She's perfect," he whispered, touching Elena's tiny hand. The baby gripped his finger with surprising strength, her eyes one gray, like his, one black, like Laura's, blinking up at them with ancient wisdom wrapped in newborn innocence. "She has your stubbornness," Laura said, exhausted and radiant. "And your light." Elio pressed a kiss to Laura's forehead, then Elena's. Literally. The baby glowed, soft and golden like dawn breaking through storm clouds. The prophecy made flesh a hybrid child who could heal the wounded, bridge the gap between vampire and human, transform hate into hope. But to Laura, she was just Elena, their daughter, their future, their proof that love could grow in the darkest places if you were brave enough to let it. 3 weeks after Elena's birth, Laura did something no one expected. She organized a peace ceremony in the cemetery where jazz music played and voodoo magic hummed beneath the earth. Vampires and humans gathered together for the first time in centuries, not as enemies, not as predator and prey, but as neighbors learning to coexist. Laura stood before them, Elena in her arms, the baby's healing light gentle against the darkness. "I was forced into this world," Laura told the assembled crowd. "Married to a man who didn't want me treated like an object, told my only value was my bloodline." She looked at Elio standing proud beside her. "But I learned something in the months that followed. Love isn't given, it's chosen. And when we choose it, when we fight for it, protect it, trust it, we become something stronger than we ever were alone." She raised Elena slightly, the baby's light growing brighter. "This is our daughter, half human, half vampire. All hope. She represents what this city could become if we stop seeing each other as threats and start seeing each other as—" Laura paused, emotion catching in her throat. "As people who deserve kindness, who deserve second chances, who deserve love." An elder vampire stepped forward, the same one who'd called Elena an abomination months ago. His face was scarred, ancient, hardened by centuries of war. He knelt. "I was wrong," he said simply. "About her, about you, about love making us weak." He looked up at Laura, something like wonder in his immortal eyes. "You've shown us that love makes us brave, and bravery is the only thing that can save us from ourselves." One by one, vampires knelt. Then humans joined them. The cemetery filled with the sound of old grudges dying and new alliances being born. Elena giggled, a bright, innocent sound that somehow felt like forgiveness. Later that night, after the ceremony ended and the castle grew quiet, Laura found herself standing in the same corridor where everything had changed. The place where she'd dropped her mother's cross pendant. Where she'd overheard Elio say, "I don't want her. I never did." Where the girl she'd been had died and the woman she'd become had been born. Elio found her there, Elena asleep against her shoulder. "What are you doing?" he asked gently. Laura touched the wall where she'd pressed herself, listening to her heart break. "Remembering." "Does it still hurt?" "No." She turned to him, smiled. "It's just, I stood here 9 months ago feeling worthless, invisible, like I was nothing more than a vessel for someone else's plans." She looked down at Elena, touched her daughter's soft cheek. "Now I'm here with you, with her, with a life I chose. And I finally understand what my mother meant." About being your own light. About being brave enough to protect what matters, even when the world tells you it's impossible. Laura stepped closer to Elio, let him wrap his arms around both of them. "I thought surviving was enough. But surviving isn't living. Living is choosing love even when it terrifies you. Especially then." Elio kissed her, gentle and reverent. "You saved me, Laura. In every way a person can be saved." "We saved each other," she corrected. "That's what love does. It doesn't make one person whole. It makes two people brave enough to be broken together and heal together." They stood in the corridor, a family of 3, where once there'd been only loneliness and fear. Through the window, New Orleans glittered beneath melting snow. The world outside wasn't perfect. There would be more challenges, more threats, more nights when fear tried to steal their hope. But they would face it together. Human and vampire. Mortal and immortal. Light and shadow learning to coexist. Just like Elena, the living bridge between two worlds, the proof that love could conquer hate if you were willing to fight for it. Laura thought of all the women who'd been told they were worthless, who'd been treated like objects, overlooked, dismissed. Women who survived in silence because they thought they had no choice. You have a choice, she wanted to tell them. Choose to be your own light. Choose to fight for what you love. Choose to be brave. And maybe, just maybe, that choice would change everything. And she finally understood that the greatest magic wasn't in ancient bloodlines or immortal power. It was in the quiet courage to love someone completely, trust them fully, and build a life that honored both the darkness you'd survived and the light you'd become. In the end, that was the only salvation that mattered. Thank you for walking this journey with Laura and Elio. If their story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs to remember that love, real, brave, chosen love, can transform even the darkest places into home.